Cool. Hey, cool. All right. Oops. And so yeah, Denise just joined us, and so I think we're okay to go.
Yeah.
All right, well, great. Hello, everybody. Yate, welcome. My name is Jackson Brossi, and it's my pleasure and privilege to serve as Executive Director for the Native CDFI Network, a network of community development financial institutions serving Native people and active in 27 different states.
Because they always,
So,
when I talk to him, he always talks
I
about
appreciate
financing
everybody
and new market.
joining us today. And we have some really special guests, our friends at the Department of Interior's Indian Economic Division of Indian Economic Development. And before we get started, I want to acknowledge our members that are present and a few of our board members. And I see we have Cindy Middlestat, who's joins us regularly from all the way from Alaska, from the Bristol Bay Development Corporation, who's our board secretary. So Cindy, do you want to say any words as we get started?
Sure. Chamai, good morning from Anchorage. Thanks for attending.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Cindy. And they just had an election out in Anchorage for the mayor, and my friend didn't make it. But anyway, cool. All right. So let's get started. As I said, we have some great guests, and this time we wanted to reserve all the time we have to have a discussion with them. If there's extra time, we have a bunch of announcements toward the end, but I figured we should start off and hear directly from them. And so here's kind of an agenda, loose agenda, and we have three items we flagged to talk about. One is the Indian Business Incubators program that a lot of our members and some of our friends and affiliates have been interested in. The guaranteed loan program, as well as the insurance, is a product that I think most Native CDFIs are familiar with, and is a great tool. And then I think some of the folks who are here were contacted by a graduate study group at the George Washington University, and they did a study, and Morgan's been really leading the way on that. And he said he could give us some update on how that's going. So with that, I took some information from the DOI's website, and our friends are from the Office of the Indian Economic Development, and they are with DOI. And I didn't put the org chart here, but I think we'll ask Morgan and his team to tell us a bit about them. But before we get there, I want to introduce Morgan. Morgan is a friend and a great advocate for Indian country. He is the acting director of the Office of Indian Economic Development at DOI, and works, I guess, under the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Indian Affairs, and he's a member of the Cherokee Nation and also Osage, and he went to Harvard, so we can give him a little make some jokes about that. But he, like I said, he's been great, and he's also attended our annual conference. He came in 2019 and has been really engaged in Indian country and economic development for quite some time, serving not only at DOI, but heading up the White House Council on Indian Affairs under the Obama administration as well. So bringing a wealth of expertise and really commitment to the area. So thank you, Morgan. And with that, I want to invite you to introduce yourself and your team and what you all are doing.
Thank you so much, Jackson. It's a privilege to be here today, especially with so many advocates and leaders and practitioners of economic development in Indian country. So I appreciate the opportunity for my colleagues and I to share some information and to have a dialogue. And I do have a few experts with me today from the Office of Indian Economic Development. And one in particular I will start with, Denise Edwards. Denise, are you on?
Yeah.
Great. So Denise Edwards has assumed the role of permanently of the division chief for economic development, and that division is responsible for all of the grants that come out of OIED. And Jackson has pulled up a slide of the different grants out of OIED. They're on the screen, and some news for Native CDFI as well. Denise will be assuming the mantle of acting director for Office of Indian Economic Development. And we're very happy that she is. She has a wealth of experience in economic development over 20 years. And she is coming to us from HHS, but I will let Denise share more about her background. Jackson had mentioned the White House Council on Native American Affairs in the Obama administration, and I'm actually going to resume that role as executive director again of that council. And I'm excited to work with you all on the various economic development initiatives there again. But we do have a lot of information to share, including the incubator program. I want to get to the introductions to the team though. Denise, would you like to give an intro?
Hey, greetings. My name is Denise Edwards, and I am the new chief of the Division of Economic Development. And as Morgan indicated, I'm also now the acting director, the Office of Indian Economic Development. So thrilled to be here. I'm originally from the Tuscarora Nation. We're about 10 miles north of Niagara Falls, New York. So I'm actually located in Denver, Colorado. So it's a pleasure to meet everyone. I'm on my 4th day and moving strong, and we have an incredible team that we're working with, and I'm really excited for them to get a chance to tell you a little bit more about the grant programs.
So her 4th day means that she knows everything already. So you can ask her all the hard questions. We also have David Johnson, the acting division chief for the Division of Capital Investment. David.
Hi, everyone. I am a non-native. However, I worked with the department for 23 years, and I worked with the Office of Indian Economic Development and its predecessor for 16 years. And I work with the Division of Capital Investment, which delivers the Indian Loan Guarantee and Insurance Program mentioned earlier. And I'm happy to introduce a little bit more about that. It's really what I have to offer.
Thank you, David, and for your leadership of that division. And we also have James West, who is tremendous help with OIED. And many of you probably worked with James or had communications with him before, but he is helping oversee the Indian Business Incubator Program, in addition to all of the other grants that we offer. James.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. I've also worked in this office since 2007, and before that was worked for the tribe Pueblo Laguna for 7 years, and I help Denise manage our grants programs. So it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Great. Thank you, James. So Jackson, do we want to just go through the follow the agenda?
Yeah, I think so. And then, yeah, I just want to say thanks to you and your team for joining. And it's really great that this might be Denise's first public meeting. So appreciate you gracing us with that first public meeting as the head of the Division of Economic Development. Is that correct? Term? Awesome.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. And she's the acting, so she's the boss of the office.
Okay.
Thank you, Jackson. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. Cool. And then I want to acknowledge a couple more of our board members who joined. We've got Christopher Coburn from the Muskogee Fund out in Oklahoma. Hi, Chris. And then Natalie Charlie from Tala Fund out in Washington State. Cool. So yeah, so I think the headliner for this discussion would be, we wanted to talk about like I said, those 3 things: the business incubators, the some of the loan guarantee products and the insurance guarantee, and then the the study. But I think that to start off with, the business incubator piece is new, and it's hot, really hot off the press. I know you guys had a listening session last week. And can you tell us a bit about that? And then I think what would be helpful is if after you tell a bit about it, then we open up for some questions from our members.
Sure, that sounds good. We did have, so we're really excited about the business incubator program, and this was a law and a program that I think some of the partners here on the phone helped push. Then Congresswoman Holland, now Secretary Holland, helped push this as well, and it became a reality. So we had consultations on the draft rule for this incubator program, and we had that May 12th and May 13th. And David helped lead one of those, and James also helped lead both of those. I was on the second one on May 13th. And those, we can go through aspects of the draft rule and how the grant at this point is envisioned of working. But at those consultations, we received comments there, and we also have until June 14th to submit written comments on that. And certainly today, any questions that you all have or any comments will be taken into consideration as well, especially given that you all are every day working on economic development and different aspects in Indian country. So this incubator program is for those that aren't as familiar, and I'll be relying on James to help with some of the descriptions of the program. So it was stemming from the Native American Business Incubator Act of 2020, this new grant program. And its intention is to fund certain entities, tribes, tribal colleges, universities, tribal nonprofits, and other nonprofits to facilitate business incubators for reservation communities. And a business incubator is an organization that assists entrepreneurs in developing viable businesses. And it provides specialized resources tailored towards business growth, training, mentoring, and hands-on business development, access to a community of entrepreneurs and business owners. So really connecting budding entrepreneurs with a network and with mentorship. And the idea is to accelerate entrepreneurship in reservation communities and tribal communities, promote collaboration, and address the specific challenges that sometimes come with doing business in tribal communities. And overall, it's an economic development initiative. Some of the services that would be provided in these incubators are advice and counseling to entrepreneurs to navigate the different obstacles to transform an innovative idea into an actual operational business. And these incubators should also provide workspace and facilities, offer advice on how to access capital, and which is where one of the areas where the Native CDFI network would come in, offer business education and networking and mentorship opportunities. There's also a role for tribal colleges and universities in this, especially with the business education piece. So who was eligible to apply for the grant? And this comes straight from the law. To be eligible to apply for this, you would need to be able to provide the physical workspace, the equipment, and the connectivity necessary for Native businesses and Native entrepreneurs to collaborate and to conduct business on a local, regional, national, and international level, depending on what that business is. And you would need to be a federally recognized tribe, or a tribal college and university, or an institution of higher learning that will have been operational for not less than 1 year before receiving the grant, and either a tribal or private nonprofit organization that provides business and financial technical assistance, and again, will have been operational for more than a year than if by the time they receive the grant. and those institutions have to commit to serving tribal or reservation communities. So everything now is done through grants.gov as far as the grants that are run out of Office of Indian Economic Development. So for the application for the incubator program, that would also be through grants.gov. And the grant requirements, we can go over some of that now. And I want to, let me see if I can pull this. So within the actual grant application, you would have to certify that you're one of those entities that I just described, a federally recognized tribe, a tribal college, a TCU, tribal college or university, a tribal or a private nonprofit organization, or an institution of higher learning, in addition to a TCU. So you have to certify that when you apply. You have to provide a description of the communities that you'll serve with this incubator, and then a 3-year plan for those services, because this grant is actually for 3 years when it's awarded. And of course, a detailed budget, information demonstrating your experience. So the reviewers of this application will need to make sure that this is not a new endeavor for the applicants. Description of a non-federal contribution of at least 25% of the grant amount requested. And that is able to be waived. And as it's envisioned right now, the applicant could request that waiver with their application. And so you wouldn't have to put up the 25% at that application if you're requesting a waiver, but you can request it during the time of the application. And then a site description of the place where the physical workspace will be for this, this incubator program. So just a description of where it will be. And some of the evaluation criteria that's proposed for these grants, I'll go over some of that. One is ability. So the ability of the applicant to operate a business incubator as demonstrated by the experience and qualifications, and to be able to provide those services within 3 months of receiving the grant, and to provide quality incubation services to a significant number of Native businesses or entrepreneurs in that area. So again, the ability, are you ready to go within 3 months of receiving that grant? And then the experience will be another aspect that will be reviewed. Does the resume, does the history support a well-versed incubator program that could go for 3 years and be able to enhance services if they're already providing services, and you have to at least serve one tribal community. And also, let me just make sure I get all the criteria here. So the extent to which the grant award will enable the awardee that's already providing business services, how will this grant appreciably enhance those services? So the grant shouldn't be just supplementing or taking the place of funding that's already there. It should be able to take it to the next level or to do something different with the funding. James, anything that I've said so far that needs to be, that you think could be better stated, or anything that I've misstated from your perspective, James?
No, Morgan, I think you did a great job. Yeah, you'll see that I threw the link to the PowerPoint into the chat, and also the address is where you would provide comments. And I would just want to say that the PowerPoint is pretty self-explanatory, but it does help people think through on what they might comment on. And so I'd encourage you to look at that and then submit comments. And I would also encourage you to not only comments, but possible suggestions or advice on how you would see this or envision this as well. So we can take all those things into consideration as we when we go to finalize the regulations and then build the NOFO and put it out for award.
Thank you, James. I do see a few chat comments. The one is Muskogee Fund is a certified native CDFI that have IRC 7871 tribal nonprofit status and should be eligible. And so the comment is that a native CDFI should be identified as an eligible entity. A few native CDFIs are for-profit entities, though most are nonprofit. And that, so we'll accept, I mean, go ahead, sorry, Jackson.
I would say if I can jump in, I think we can just call on Christopher and Cindy, and they'll be able to expand on that. But there's a fair amount. So Christopher, you might be on mute. Yeah, can't hear you. Well, let's go to Cindy first, and we'll come back to Christopher. But Cindy, did you want to expand upon on that written comment?
Sure. So, in Alaska, and I'll just use the Bristol Bay Development Fund as a model, but there are a few others that are similar. The regional funds serve a very vast and expansive region. Most have been seeded by one of 12 regional corporations as well, under the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. So that's interesting. Yeah. So my thought is that add native CDFI as an eligible entity and identify those specifically because of the network, and native CDFIs have, and the NCN, obviously. Some of those native CDFIs serve very specific tribes, some very specific target markets, and then some are interstate as well. And then as you move along, I'd be curious to know about how the legislation allows for more virtual connectivity, particularly in Alaska. Again, the footprint that the Bristol Bay serves, there's 32 villages, and each of those villages is accessible only by air. So how does this accommodate incubation of businesses who live in a very remote or alienated community?
Yeah, thank you for that, for the suggestion and the question and David, and Denise and James, please feel free to jump in. But I think that suggestion on, because I'm looking at the criteria that was in the law. That's a tribe, TCU, institution of higher learning, or a tribal or private nonprofit organization. So I do think that native CDFIs could fit in that fourth eligibility aspect there. So I think what might be helpful is if we'll accept the comment here, but Jackson, one thing to consider is if there's some overall comments from native CDFI network, then maybe they could be submitted at the consultation address, the email address, to make sure that we get them by June 14th. But that is something that regardless, Ms. Middlestat, that will take into consideration for sure, the native CDFI specifically. And then as far as the Alaska as the example, when we were discussing this, we discussed at the consultation, the incubator could be, for instance, in a city or in an area that provides services that are, like we gave the example, I think, of Albuquerque or Billings or even Minneapolis or some place like that, where there are tribal communities, reservation communities surrounding that city, and that incubator could provide services there, And so I think if there's a proposal that comes in for an Alaska Native entity, village, then if that proposal has a way of making it work, then I would think that would be considered for the grant program. So I think all creativity and all proposals are welcome here. Team, anything else to add to that, or maybe?
May I jump in just and ask a quick question? I'm
Sure.
sorry, I think I have audio now. Thank you. So what I was raising is just depending on how you define tribal nonprofit, that number's been too tight as far as the type. If we're incorporated under tribal law, often we are not 501c3, we're IRC code 7871, which is a tribal nonprofit. So Internal Revenue Code 7871. So I understand it matches the intent of what people are trying to do. And then there are some that were started by tribes and spun off and spin other tribes that are now separate 501c3s serving multiple tribes in the native CDFI definition. So if you can capture both types as far as nonprofit status, IRC 7871 and 501c3, that would be very helpful. We are a tribal nonprofit, and they're out of the 67, there's probably, what would you say, Jackson, about a dozen that have a straight tie to the tribe, and the rest have now become full separate nonprofits serving multiple tribes. So, but if we were to apply, we've had it in our strategic plan for about 6 years or 5 years to do this, a big incubator. And we're now to the point where we need to add staff by volume, and we're looking at maybe buying a big enough building so that a portion of that building could be shared space. And what I'm envisioning, and I could be off the park, but is placing our business development staff members in that section with their office space, maybe a vacant office space or two, and then a great big shared area with conference tables and computers and phones and the ability to do web conferences and things like that. Is that enough of what you're talking about? Or are you talking about needing multiple private offices for people and those type of things? Because we do a ton of training for business, and we're going to keep doing it. It's just a matter of what, like a manufacturing one would look a lot different than a general business one, because you would need a lot of milling equipment and other things.
So for that question, Mr. Coburn, so the good thing about this stage of the process is that the draft rule and how this grant operates is still being formed. And so these insights about the IRC 7871 designation, and then your exploration of what the actual facilities would look like. We have to meet the letter of the law, but there's interpretation on how that's done. And so if you have an idea there, that it should be the physical space or physical site should be afforded latitude to do this, whatever that is, what you just described, then it's helpful to maybe have that written. We're getting the information here, but it's always helpful to have something that we can cite, go to and things like that.
Yeah, just in our minds right now, and it's flexible because we want to meet the needs of not only our tribe, but there's 3 other federally recognized tribes that are sister tribes, different tribal towns that are federally recognized, and then we serve any other Native American that lives in our reservation of 11 counties in Oklahoma. So a lot of different target market, but in essence, like in a bigger city, there's those shared workspaces where you can pay so much and be there and do things and use their equipment and use a conference room and a thing like that. That's what I'm seeing has been a need of doing this as a CDFI in here, where we're both rural, suburban, and urban is all in our market. And so it's of 11 counties of Oklahoma. So it's just, that's kind of what I was asking, what are you saying an incubator will look like? And then what are you wanting it to do?
Yeah, I think so. Jackson, we may, we're taking notes as well, but we may ask for this recording too, so we can reference it just to make sure we're getting everything. But to Mr. Coburn's point, what we're discussing today is still what is being proposed. And so if there are either tighter definitions on things that you all think should be the case, or just a different way of looking at something, now's the time to make sure that that's heard. And we're hearing that today. So this is good. And we'll take that back to our, you know, when all the comments come in by June 14th, they're all going to be considered and influence the final rule. Because again, like what Ms. Middlestat and Mr. Coburn have displayed, is that these ideas you've thought about for a long time and you've practiced them. So we want to make sure they're included in, that the rule reflects that. So.
Cool. And I think if I can add anything, I think with respect to tribal CDFIs, like Christopher noted, about 30% or so of native CDFIs are tribal CDFIs. The law outlines eligible parties as both. One is tribal governments, and so arguably they could fit under there. But then two is the nonprofits, and so I think we want to make sure. Well, in our comment letter, we'll make sure that the tribal nonprofits are clearly spelled out. And but I think that should align with the law. And we had one other question from Anna LeBeau from South Dakota. Anna, you come off mute and ask the question?
Sure. Hi. And David Johnson, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to work for Interior quite a while ago. So way back when in Aberdeen. So
I certainly do.
okay, nice to see you.
Good seeing you.
So yeah, as an urban native CDFI located in Rapid City, we don't provide services to one specific tribe. We're open to any Native community member. And given that Rapid City has a high population of natives and our target market is for the lower to medium income families, which of course is primarily Native, I'm just seeing how we would fit in there, given that the statement was for that an organization would have to be affiliated with a tribe.
Thank you for asking that, Ms. LeBeau. I may have misstated. It doesn't have to be affiliated with a particular tribe. It can serve a number of tribes. Like with Rapid City, there are, you know, it has a high population of Native people there relatively, and then you have tribal nations surrounding Rapid City. So that the business incubator you described, yours should be eligible to apply. Is that, I mean, do you read that, David and James, the same way?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
As for Christopher's comments earlier, I mean, when we've read through the law and put together the draft regulations and had the consultations, I can't imagine the proposals, the applicants just demonstrating in their proposals hybrid plans to incorporate brick and mortar and virtual learning in their plans. Those will be, I feel like those will be the strongest ones, given the long distance areas, especially in Alaska and rural areas that the grant is going to be serving. So those are all great ideas.
Thank you.
And Christopher, we would really appreciate it if you could submit one of your comments describing the IRC 7871, and so we can, you know, review it and consider it as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had some flashbacks while you were making your presentation, Morgan, for the cram session I had to do to make it in your absence. And I was reminded that when going through the fairly brief statute, it's easy to see where the hard stops are, and there are some areas of flexibility as well. I think in how funds can be spent, that's an area where comments would be very welcome. I remember two of the comments we got: can you use them for relending? Can you use them for hiring? Not clear comments like that would be helpful. And in terms of what James just said, I also would add to that that a pandemic has just taught us that sometimes flexibility in how to deliver services can be important. So I would tend to agree with his comments.
Thanks. And I have a few other comments, but I want to see if anybody else does before I jump in. Okay. Well, I think one of the things that jumped out to me, and I talked to a couple other folks, is the intent obviously is for this to serve Native communities. And it's very clear that tribes and tribal entities and nonprofit serving tribes are eligible to apply. It didn't seem like it was clear that the organizations had to be Native led or have a Native, if the nonprofits had to have Native boards, et cetera. And is that something that's come up in the discussions, or did I just read that wrong?
I think you're correct. Universities and other higher institutions that have no Native board of directors and so forth appear to be eligible. That was my initial reading.
Okay. And I guess, and then with that reading, then I think obviously the Native CDFIs are in the community, and they, by definition, their target market is serving majority Native American community, or Native American clients, sorry, and they can be urban, rural, et cetera. So I think that's going to be one of our comments, is we think that the final rules should take into account whether an organization is Native led and has is run either by the board or by a director who's in the community, whether that's urban or rural or reservation. I think another comment that we'll likely add is that the 20% match can be a challenge, and that there's also I think you referenced the Treasury has recognized that that's also been a challenge in getting funds out to organizations that really are doing good. And so I think we're going to strongly urge that match be waived, and Congress permanently waived the match for Native CDFIs. I think it might have been in the same bill that this bill passed in. So I think there's precedence for, and I guess the understanding that match is a challenge in getting funding out. So that's another one. Anybody else have some comments or questions?
Jackson, I see another question about the physical space from Mr. Coburn. And James and David, I know that during the consultations, the questions about space came up. For instance, what could be included for space costs, and the 25% match, can it be in-kind services? James or David, do you recall some of that discussion from the consultations?
I do. I don't think that the legal beagles have quite wrestled that one to the ground yet, but the language seems to suggest that the contribution has to be of the same form as the funds, which would suggest it's got to be financial. Now, there's nothing that I saw that says that an individual waiver for an applicant couldn't be for any portion of that 20%. So it could be, that maybe you can come up with 5% or 15% and submit a stronger application than somebody who is asking for a complete waiver. But that's about as far as I recall us getting on that.
I think on Christopher's question, so part of the requirement of the grant is that they have to provide physical space and an online, but I could see that other costs, materials, trainers, not sure what you mean by hybrid, but those elements could be contributed towards the match cost as well, the 25%. And also keep in mind that there is the secretary's decision that the secretary can waive that depending on how strong the proposal is.
One thing that comes clear from the law is they want geographic diversity. They want all areas of Indian country to get served adequately. And overlapping applications will be one category of consideration, but somebody who's serving an area that's otherwise not served, I think they're going to lean heavily in the favor of trying to find a way to say yes.
Okay.
Looking through the notes here to make sure that a few other, so for 3 years, the grants are, and based on, there'll be a site, OIED, the economic development will have to do a site visit, or if that's not possible, a video visit of the facility. And the award can't duplicate other federal funding, but it can be in addition to. So if there is already federal funding for the incubator program, that's fine as long as this new grant doesn't duplicate any type of activities. So you can still kind of pull together federal resources, just make sure that they are doing different things for the incubator.
Morgan,
Yeah.
did I remember correctly that it can potentially be extended one additional year, but there's a higher match required?
Yeah, that's correct. There's, it actually can be extended, I believe 3 years. Like the plan can be renewed, but then they have to put in, the law says it has to be a higher match of 33%.
Which is also able to be waived, right, if necessary. A few other quick things. The law mandates that we facilitate relationships between the awardees and education institutions that serve Native American communities, for example, tribal colleges and universities. And we are to coordinate with other agencies to ensure awardees have information needed to provide Native businesses and entrepreneurs with assistance in applying to agency programs. So basically, we're working with other agencies to make sure that the services that are available are known and easier to access. And comments, if they're not submitted to one of us directly, then they should be submitted to consultation@bia.gov. And that's the general overview, Jackson, but again, open to questions. Or I'll leave it to you, Jackson, whether you
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, let's see if we get any other final questions.
I think Laura has one. She's
Cool.
asked how many grants available and average size of award. And those are things that we're still determining. Isn't that right, Morgan, Denise?
Yes, I will say for the funding, it's important, obviously, and the authorization for the law, that was in the Native American Business Incubator Program law, authorized up to $5 million a year for this program. What became clearer, or what I was reminded of, is that the authorizing law is different than the appropriation law. And so in this first year, which we were terming a pilot, there was specifically authorized $500,000, so 500,000. And the new budget has not come out yet. It should come out any day. And so we will see what the proposal is in that new budget. But in the meanwhile, we have a minimum that was specifically authorized for this. And we're going to look at other areas of funding that we can pull in for this program, because all indications are that this is a priority program. So we need to make it succeed for tribal communities. So we think, in looking at the, like James alluded to, in looking at the awards, we don't have a ceiling yet or a range, but that's where we would invite recommendations from you all as to what those awards, what maybe the average award should be, or ceilings, and that insight into the actual numbers, we're open to that. So.
And looks like we've got a question from Chad Poitcher, who's, I guess, maybe Chad, you want to come off mute and ask the question?
I can. Well, so we at the Tuahe Foundation, and Anthony, good to see you again.
Yeah, hi Chad.
How you been? So at the Tuahe Foundation, we provide microgrants directly to small business entrepreneurs here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and we are looking to expand outstate to Minnesota and become a regional player in 2022. So we don't want to become a CDFI, and so we want to team up. And there are a couple of CDFIs, obviously, in the this regional area that we would entertain doing a joint proposal with on how we can complement each other's core competencies. And so my question is, would you guys be open or receptive to a joint proposal among multiple entities, including possibly a tribal college, in deploying this business incubator program?
I mean, it seems like as long as they demonstrate that they're an eligible entity or maybe a lead entity, and I know that our evaluation criteria includes partnerships. So it seems like that would be acceptable. Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't given thought to that, but I agree with you, James. It seems like it could be. David and Denise, if you have other thoughts. Again, I think the good thing is it's still being formed right now. So that if that's a recommendation, Chad, then, or if you have a recommendation, it's open. So
I think that came up in the consultation as well, because we had a question about consortiums applying, like TCC in Alaska.
Yeah, I remember some sort of question about that. And although I don't have access, I'm not looking at the law right now. My perception was that is okay.
Okay.
I was thinking it was, that's something to consider, because the consortia, especially with a lot of the Alaska areas, that's how they function with their programs and serving people. So I would think that we'd want to consider that as well.
I want to say that the way it's written right now for eligibility is very flexible. I don't know if we would want to change that, because it's the applicant's responsibility to demonstrate that they're eligible. So for instance, when Christopher was talking about being a 7871 IRC, whatever, I mean, that would be in the application demonstrating that they're an eligible applicant. And I think it's flexible for a reason right now, but we could definitely add detail to it.
Great. So I think we also wanted to talk about two other things. So I think maybe we'll get to those pretty quickly. But everybody has the email address for the comments. They're due June 14th. And we'll coordinate, and I'll get in touch with Christopher, make sure that we get the right NCN comments on things like the tribal CDFIs. So with that, I think a lot of folks on the call are familiar with the DOI's insured loans, but I guess we have David here, who's I think in charge of the program. Can you give us folks really a quick high level overview of that program, as well as the insurance, and then we can open it up to some questions and comments.
Sure, you're right that many folks have heard some presentation from our office previously. We have two products under the Indian Financing Act of 1974, so we've been around for a while. But we offer loan guarantees and we offer loan insurance, both of which are designed to help lenders get over their reluctance to lend on commercially reasonable rates, to Indian-owned businesses. That includes for-profits and not-for-profits. Our eligibility criteria for lenders typically lets in all CDFIs. That was a specific 2006 amendment to the statute. And most banks and also some non-bank lenders under criterion which are available at our regulations, which is 25 CFR Part 103. I know all of you like looking up the law. CDFIs have to be in operation for 3 years, however, before we want them to use our program. Now, CDFIs can use either product and they can use both products. It's fine if they choose to do so. Generally speaking, guarantees are for bigger deals. Businesses that need, for instance, $250,000 or more, up to, we don't really have a statutory limit. We have done deals as large as 55 million before. That is a new record for us and it makes us scared, but we did it. Insurance is designed to be a little quicker and faster and more perhaps a marriage between our program and CDFIs. If you're dealing with $250,000 or less, and you are a certified lender with us, we will give you an allocation at the beginning of the fiscal year of say $500,000 or $1 million. You can simply draw on that to qualified applicants, make your own determination, send us the paperwork in afterwards. We don't review it in advance unless it goes over $250,000 for a particular borrower, or you request a very little used but much loved feature of our program called interest subsidy. We have been really tapping the brakes on interest subsidy for a while. But if you have one of those factors, then you do have to submit your loan package, your presentation, all the borrower's application materials to us for pre-review. But again, the advantage of insurance is that if you get an allocation, you can do things very quickly on your own time. The other main differences between guarantees and insurance, if something goes wrong, you have to attempt to liquidate your collateral first with insurance before submitting a claim to us for any deficiency there may be. That is an option. You don't have to do that with loan guarantees. You can actually submit an unliquidated loan package to us, defaulted borrower, and let us take care of that. The other thing is insurance is cheaper. We offer up to 90% insurance on outstanding principal and interest owed. And it is 1% of the original principal amount. That is the 1% of the original insured portion of the original loan amount that is the charge for the premium. And it's a one-time premium, that's it. It's 2% for loan guarantees. There is also a statutory thing, which nobody much likes, but we have to live with it. For insured lenders, if you have to submit a claim to us, you've got several different borrowers, one of them has gone bad. We pay the lesser of the amount we have insured on that one loan, which is up to 90% or 15% of your entire outstanding portfolio. So there's an either or there. That is a very quick down and dirty of what we do and how we do it. We try to turn around applications within 30 days. We are amazingly talented field office. We have 2 people in our Northwest zone, 2 people in our Eastern zone, 2 people in our Southwest zone, and 2 people in Alaska. Those folks process absolutely everything. And 2 of those zones are larger than Argentina, so hats off to them. They get together with a credit committee. They work with 1 or 2 other people who work with central office on some other matters. And they make determinations based on our regulations. And then I sign the final documents and it's done. We put, since the credit reform of 2000, which went into effect 1992, we've done over $2 billion in Indian country. Not huge by federal standards, but I think we've had quite a footprint in some of the businesses you all actually know. Happy to take questions about how we're doing, how we do it.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks, David. And I want to see if anybody has any questions. And we don't have that much time, unfortunately. My quick question is, I don't know if, I guess I know some of the bank CDFIs that do the loan guarantee. I don't know any, I guess, loan fund CDFIs that do the loan guarantee. I guess how many CDFIs do you work with on the loan guarantee, and then how many CDFIs do you work with on the insurance?
Yeah, we have listed how many are active and how many are listed are two different answers. Currently, lenders that have loan guarantee agreements with us that have been active within the last, say, 7 years, we're probably talking 200, 250 lenders throughout the country. Some are much more active than others and make up the bulk of our work. In terms of insurance, that actually didn't come online until about 2008. And it is taking off. I think we have 9 insured lenders right now, some of which you would know, some of which are maybe unrepresented here.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
we could definitely use more, and we need some in our Alaska, by the way.
Well, I think that's a great place where we can grow, and I think maybe we'll circle back on maybe the insurance piece if there's interest from our members. And I do want to come back to the George Washington University study or paper, but I don't know if we have enough time. Is there any quick update there, Morgan, or should we?
I mean, David
for
really
another
led
time?
the charge there, and happy to share that. David, do you want to just give an encapsulation? We're really impressed by their work, and thank you so much for participating. But David?
Yes, I think they needed to select a particular angle to get into and study our program. This was part for their education, part for our benefit. And I think everybody benefited. You're right, it was excellent work. And Morgan, I think I agree. Anybody who wants a copy of this should get it. It's a wonderful piece, not necessarily to answer the question they set out on, but their interviews with individuals was very, very instructive to us. They just went out, this team of 5 went out and interviewed a whole lot of people and got great perspectives on our program. And the update on what they were intending to do is there's a piece built into the statute that we have not fully built out yet in our regulations, and that is to create a formal secondary market. That is probably less of importance for folks dealing with smaller loans than it would be for those who have large portfolios of guaranteed loans. And so they studied 3 different approaches to creating a formal secondary market, and they came to some conclusions on that, which we are still studying and will follow up on. The greater pieces of knowledge, though, are that were helpful to us is that many of the lenders who use our program, both guaranteed and insured, don't want to let go, don't want to sell their loans. Some do, but they're in the minority. A lot of folks want to at least continue to service because they treasure those relationships that they have built with Indian communities. And I think that a lot of positive feedback came that frankly we will use to self-promote from here on to eternity, because the program is apparently very well loved out there. And they compared us a little bit to other federal programs and went in a little bit to the reasons that our program serves Indian country. It was designed for Indian country, and it serves Indian country as well as or better than any of the other programs. One of the pieces that came out in earlier commentary on the grant that's just coming out is the flexibility aspect. I think if you were going to look for a trait of the Office of Indian Economic Development, is we understand that with as many federally recognized tribes as there are, as many great ideas, as many local issues that need resolution, as much self-determination avenues as can be pursued, we have to remain flexible. And I think they're wanting to make regulations that will serve the needs of Indian country for grants to be as flexible as possible. And we have heard over and over and over that lenders and borrowers who use our program are very thankful that we're flexible. One of the curiosities is that there's not actually a requirement. Most of our borrowers are an LLC or a partnership or an S corp or a C corp or something like that. But technically, if a tribe wanted to invent a new type of corporate structure nobody has ever seen before, as long as there's accountability and record keeping and a defined way of identifying who's in charge, we could entertain that. Whereas I think you would have problems with a structure that was not so identified in any other federal program. But the program report was it was with I've forgotten, it was over 100 pages long or something like that.
I mean, we could offer the condensed version of that because some of it was just notes and stuff, but it was.
Yeah, there may be some quotes in there that we probably ought not to necessarily. We might want to think about that before releasing, but it's a great report, and I have no problem with releasing it in as unredacted form as possible.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think we've got to shut it down. And I know some folks had to leave. There was an SBA meeting, and then there's also a Treasury SSBCI thing coming up. So I want to say thank you to Morgan and your team, David, and everybody. And then you got any last words, Morgan?
I don't. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy working with you all. So yeah, more to come. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. And I think Christopher's our last board member on. You have any last words, Christopher?
No, not really. Just appreciative of everyone taking the time and recognizing Native CDFIs for the space we play. It's kind of, I call it boots on the ground. I mean, we see this every day. You're seeing it from the federal perspective, and just how we can work together is really important. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for the information. One last question is, do you have any idea after the questions when the NOFA would come out?
So we did talk about that scheduling. James, remember that we kind of, could you share that again? It's escaped my mind, but we did think about that.
Right, the comments close June 14th. There'll be probably a week or so of review, and then the regulations get finalized. I'm not sure how long that's going to take. Elizabeth Apple will help us complete that. And then once those are complete, we'll prepare the notice of funding opportunity and get that out there. Our goal is to award it before the end of the calendar year. So please bear with us, and you're welcome to email anytime, and I'll give you an update on the status of where we're at.
After the fiscal year, but hopefully before the calendar year is what we were thinking with all the required timelines. So.
Which, when it comes to funding, it might help us a little bit if it comes after the fiscal year, but we'll see. And but you can always email, and my email address is listed on the website as well.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks.
Thanks,
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.